بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Last week we had an introduction to the whole concept of fiqh and understanding fiqh and what fiqh means and how it is applied. And inshallah today we're going to enter and start talking about the basics of fiqh. This book is that we're studying, which is Al-Muqaddimah Al-Hadramiyya, or the Hadrami introduction, otherwise also known as Masail Al-Ta'lim, written by Imam Abdullah Al-Hadrami from Hadramaut. He's Yemeni, as one may deduce, and he was one of the prominent scholars in the Shafi'i Fiqh. He was present in around the 9th century of Hijrah, so about 400 or 500 years ago. What was the sort of the practice of the people of the past was to write the fiqh in very basic format, what they known as al-mutun, very basic, not going into details, trying to make it as simple as possible. There's no evidences mentioned in terms of Quran and Hadith, because the idea here is to learn how to practice the deen from a very basic level. When a person wants to go deeper and further, then they look at different aspects of evidences and so on. So it helps a person to understand the deen, helps them to focus, helps them to practice much better. And this is basically what Al-Muqaddim Al-Hadramiyya is. It just deals with the 4 pillars of Islam. So Salah, Sawm, Zakah and Hajj, and more details as well about what is considered an introduction or important necessity in Salah, which is Tahara and purification. And that was the sunnah of the ulama of the past, whether they taught fiqh and they wrote the fiqh, or when they compiled the books of hadith as well, they compiled it in that kind of order, starting with the tahara, purification, and then salah, and then sawm and zakat and hajj, or zakah and sawm hajj, to allow people to understand the basics, and then they would go into details in other aspects. So we begin inshallah with this text. So he says, rahimahullah, as his short introduction, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah alladhi farada alayna ta'alluma shara'i' al-Islam wa ma'rifati sahih al-mu'amalati wa fasidiha li ta'rif al-halal wal-haram. So he says that all praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has obliged us to learn the rulings of the deen. So aspects of the deen is fard on an individual to learn, because in matters which they need to learn how to practice the deen, they have to know the rules. So when you are obliged to do salah, and most people are obliged to do salah. I mean, there are exceptions, which we'll not go into detail now, but those who are obliged to do salah, they need to know how to do the salah correctly. They need to know how to prepare for salah correctly in terms of the tahara and so on. So it is obligatory. It's not something that they can just try to do as they go along. It's very important that they know this. In addition to that, they need to know halal and haram, so that they can not consume haram, that they're always falling into what is accepted from that. So learning is fard. Knowing the correct transactions is also fard, because, as we know, one of the greatest transactions or greatest in terms of its sins is riba. Riba, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that it is a war. Anybody who engages in riba has Allah has declared, Allah and His Messenger have declared war against him. Now, how many people will fall into riba because they might not know what riba is and what is the definition of riba, how does riba work, what does it mean. Some people think that riba, there's a difference between interest and usury. So they don't know the difference between what is interest, what is usury, or is it what makes something haram, or the different types of riba. So if you don't know this, you might fall into haram, and you'll be doing something which is haram and not accepted, which then affects you. And then he said, وَجَعَلَ مَآلْ مَنْ عَلِمَ ذَلِكَ وَعَمِلَ بِهِ الْخُلُودَ فِي دَارِ الْإِسْلَامِ ومصير دار السلام ومصير من خالفه وعصاه دار الانتقام. So Allah has made the abode, the one who learns the teachings and practices, because the knowledge is not just there to be just to be memorized. The knowledge has to be practiced. As Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah mentioned, ليس العلم ما حفظ إنما العلم ما نفع أو العلم ما نفع. So ilm is that which benefits people, not just that which you memorize. So it has to have a practical perspective to it. And on the other hand, the one who doesn't practice it and goes against it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make his dwelling the abode of vengeance, meaning the hellfire. And then he says, وَأَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ الْمَانُ بِالنِّعَمِ الْجِسَامِ وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله المبعوث رحمة للأنام صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه البررة الكرام. So he bear witnesses that there is none worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam Muhammad is the one who has been sent as a guidance to mankind. I won't delve too much into that perspective. And then he said, هذا مختصر لا بد لكل مسلم من معرفته أو معرفة مثله. This book, he says, is a summary which every Muslim should know, the contents of this, or at least something like it, because obviously he's not the only one who has written. Many other people have written. So you try to learn something like this, or at least something like this. فيتعين الاهتمام به وإشاعته فأسأل الله أن ينفع به وأن يجعل جمعي له خالصا لوجه الكريم. So a person should try to be concerned in terms of learning, teaching, and also to benefit others. And then he makes dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts from him and makes this work sincerely to him. So we start with the chapter of Tahara, which is the purification. And this is where we read more detailed aspects of practical issues. So first of all, the basis of all of this, which is relating to the basis of purification. Now, generally in Islam, we have the two basic modes of purification are water and secondly earth. These are the basic modes of purification, and in general there are subcategories, but generally the primary means for purification is water, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this water and he has made it a reason for cleanliness and purification. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran the ma many times, even in the surah, when he mentions in Surah Al-Ma'idah the verse of al-wudu, he says فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا. If you cannot find water, then you're going to go to the other one, which is the earth. So the principle is water, and so that's why he starts by saying لا يصح رفع الحدث ولا إزالة النجس إلا بما يسمى ماءً. Generally, again, in the purification perspective, we have two types of impurities. One is the physical, material impurity, and secondly, what we call the ritual or the spiritual impurity. So there's two types of impurities. The physical impurity is going to include all the najasat, So this will include urine, feces, vomit, blood, pus, and the likes. Okay, and there's more. We can, inshallah, we'll come to that. And the ritual impurity, which is the hadath, is when somebody breaks their purification, their state of purity, either minor, and so they need to make wudu, or major, and they need to make ghusl. So he's saying here, for any purification, it has to be water. Okay, we cannot purify things with something which is not water. All right, it has to at least have the essence water. If we come to remove, again, we mentioned last week the hadith of the Bedouin who urinated in the masjid. The Prophet ﷺ, how did he cleanse the urine? By telling them to bring buckets of water to place over that najasa. He mentioned when a dog licks in the bowl of any one of you, then you must clean it, you must wash it with water 7 times, and wash it 7 times, and one of those times will be with earth. So he mentioned water as the mode for purification. So anything that we can consider as water is going to satisfy the needs for our purification. Anything which we cannot term water, we say this is not water, okay, by definition. Either its color has changed, or its smell has changed, or its taste has changed. Anything that's changed in a way that we do not call it water, then we cannot use it. So you have water and you add it to it orange juice. Okay, now when we look at this, we say this is orange juice. Okay, it has a smell and taste of orange juice. Can I use that to make wudu? No, I can't, because it's not water. Okay, it might be 99% water, but it is not water. Similarly, things like rose water, or milk, or soap water. So even you have a whole bowl of soap, okay, water which is mixed with soap, this is not water. Okay, it is now a different taste, it has a different constituents. So the only sort of source that we can use has to be water. So he said فَإِذْ تَغَيَّرَ طَعْمُهُ أَوْ لَوْنُهُ أَوْ رِيحُهُ تَغَيُّرًا فَاحِشًا بحيث لا يسمى ماءً بمخالط طاهر يستغني الماء عنه لم تصح الطهارة به. So if it's changed in a way that we cannot call it water anymore, and something which is not an intricate part of the water, then we cannot use that water for what? For removing a material, najasa, or a spiritual or ritual, which is the hadath. And even though here, even if it is tahir, because you might have something which is tahir, like I said, orange juice, rose water, or soap, or anything like this, is tahir, it's still pure, but it has changed the water. Also he said, وَالتَّغَيُّرُ الْتَقْدِيرِ كَالتَّغَيُّرُ الْحِسِّي. So we can also note that sometimes there will be an assumed change. And what it means by assumed change, it means that the usual example they will say is that you might have like some water, you have a jug of water, and now people who use rose water, they know that rose water is basically, they bring the rose and they squeeze it, or compress it, and you get water, rose water. So it's not water, it's basically the juice of roses. Okay, and they use it to give flavors to food. Okay, now sometimes what happens with time, rose water is clear, it has no color, but it has a smell. With time, sometimes as time progresses, it loses its smell. So actually it no longer has any smell, its color is clear, no taste, so it looks very much like water. Okay, but it's not water. So is it tahir? Yes, it's tahir. Can we use it to make wudu? Huh? No, because we said it's not water. So now if this rose water were to be mixed with water, okay, here he said you have to assume how much change is going to happen with this rose water. Yani the amount of rose water that has entered onto this water, is it enough to change the water or not? It doesn't have any characteristics, yeah? It's no smell, nothing. So we're going to, here it says you're going to estimate. How are you going to estimate? By just roughly. So say you had a jug of water and some rose water was put in this. Okay, maybe like say 5 drops. What you're going to say, okay, this rose water doesn't smell of anything. If this rose water was, if it was like what they say, asir al-rumman, if it was like pomegranate juice, okay, let's assume it is pomegranate. Would that amount of pomegranate, would it change the water? Yeah, would it change the color of the jug? Would it make it red or not? If we say no, it is the amount that was put in was so small, it's not going to change. Khalas, this water is still water, it's fine to wudu. If we said no, if this rose water had a color, it would actually change the whole water. We're going to say now you can't use it for wudu, you can't use it for washing any najasa. So that's an assumed change. And that's why he gives an example. He says, فَلَوْ وَقَعَ فِيهِ مَاءُ وَرْدٍ لَا رَائِحَةَ لَهُ قُدِّرَ مُخَالِفًا بِأَوْسَطِ الصِّفَاتِ. So that's the main thing. We're going to estimate what happens. Secondly, he said, وَلَا يَضُرُّ تَغَيُّرُ يَسِيرٌ لَا يَمْنَعْ اسْمَ الْمَاءِ. If something has changed very slightly, which it's not really changed, we can still say this is water. Maybe it has changed due to time, due to longevity. Like for example, water that has been left in a tank for a long time, because of time, maybe has now a metallic taste. Okay, so this has changed due to time. So here, la yadur, it's not gonna affect. We still can use it as water. Also, similarly, if something has changed because of its environment. So water that's in a lake, okay, buhaira, a big lake. So the water is the water of the lake. Where does it come from?
Stream or river. Rain.
Yeah, it could come from a river, from a spring, usually from a spring or from rain. Okay, so these are all tahir water. They're all tahur. But with time, this lake might have earth in it. Okay, turab. So it's become murky or muddy. This has changed due to time. So therefore, it's not a problem. It's not an effect. So, seawater, again, it's changed. It's salty. But that's a natural part of the water. So again, it doesn't affect. It's still tahir. Still can be used. If it has lots of leaves that have fallen into it, like or even algae, sometimes the lake water might become green because it has so much algae. So all of these things will not affect it because it is due to time or due to its environment. So salt water from the sea, which is salty, can be used, yeah. But if you have water and you added salt to the water, you can't use it because you have changed it, you have interfered. It's not natural. Okay, the seawater is a natural, so it is fine to use. Okay. Then he says, faslun. But before this, we generally understand that the sources of water, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, the water which is known as tahur. Tahur is the water which is tahir in itself and has the ability to cleanse others. طاهر في نفسه مطهر لغيره. So this is ma tahur. Ma tahur in essence is from 4 sources. Okay, one is the sky, ma sama, which includes the rain, includes the snow, includes the hailstones, al-barad. That's why the Prophet's dua was Allahumma aghsilni bil ma'i wal thalji wal barad. This is the water from the sky. And then you have the water from the ground. Okay, the water from the ground includes the water which is either spring, ayn, or water which is from a bi'r, which is a well. So it's either a spring, it means it is gushing out, or a bi'r means it has been accumulated and it is there as a well water. Like Ma'u Zamzam and like bi'r Buda'a and others, bi'r Ruma as well. And then we have the other two types of waters, which is the water of the river and the water of the sea or the ocean. So these are the main four sources of water. Sometimes brothers will say, okay, what about tap water? Where's is that? But tap water it comes from one of these sources, isn't it? It's either coming from the rain or it's coming from a reservoir, which is a lake or whatever. So it's still the same. It's still from the same sources of that. Now, certain, this is more of an aside, but there is types of water which are more intricate. There is a type of bi'r water, which is it's tahir and tahur because it's still, but it is makruh to use it. And some might even say haram to use it. Which one is this? Does anybody know? So it is from a well, okay? And it is still from the same category of tahar, but it is haram or makruh to use this water for another reason.
Zamzam?
Huh?
Is Zamzam?
No, it's why Zamzam is recommended.
It's okay?
It's Zamzam? Yes, of course.
If it's used to najasa.
Huh?
If people throw najasa.
No.
Animals for the,
Huh?
if it's animal falling.
No, I'm thinking more specific.
The dead carcass or
punishment.
Yes. So which one is it?
Somewhere like wood or hat.
Thamud. So the bi'r of Thamud, Thamud, Qawm Salih, their main issue was they had a well. They had a well, isn't it? And they were drinking from this well. But Salih, alayhi salam, he said, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed him that the naqa, the she-camel, to drink from the well one day. لَهَا شِرْبُ يَوْمٍ وَلَكُمْ شِرْبُ يَوْم. So you have a day to drink, and they will have, and they let the camel drink one day. But they عقروا الناقة, etc. They killed the. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the adhab on Thamud. And when the Prophet ﷺ passed, because when the Prophet went to Tabuk, he passed by the dwellings of Thamud. So even when they used the water there, the Prophet ﷺ forbid them from using that water that was coming from that bi'r of Thamud, because it is linked to the adhab that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent on them. So that is more a specific type of bi'r. And then they ask as well, this is like one of the quiz questions. We have a quiz. Which spring is considered the most purest of springs? And don't say Zamzam, because it's not Zamzam. Which عين يعني ما هو الماء الذي نبت أو العين. And العين is a spring, means to gush. Which one is considered the most noble? أشرف وأكرم وأطهر ماء. Which doesn't exist now, it's gone. Why has it gone? Because the Prophet ﷺ has gone. And this is referring to the water that came from between his fingers. So the water was يعني نبت من بين أصابعه. The actual spring came from his waters. يعني he put his hands in a bowl of water, and the water started to come out. And it was enough for more than 1,400 people, this water. So this was like a ayn as well. So they say this was the most noblest. Okay, فصل يكره شديد السخونة وشديد البرودة. It's disliked to use water that's very hot or water that is very cold. Why? They said because if you use it, if this is here for tathir for the hadath, yeah, not for washing, because it is going to prevent you from doing your wudu or ghusl properly. Because if you are it's very cold, you're just gonna wash just to do it quickly. So it is makruh for that reason. And it's gonna be painful on the body if it's very very hot or very very cold. But it's not haram. It's makruh because it's not gonna allow you to do the wudu properly. ويكره المشمس في جهة حارة في إناء منطبع في بدن دون ثوب وتزول بالتبريد. There is another makruh type of water which some of the ulama took, and it's based on saying of Umar radiallahu anh, which is that any water that's heated in like a copper container, a metal container left in the sun in a hot country, and so it's heated by the sun, they disliked to use this water. Again, not haram, but disliked to use it. Why? Because they thought medically it might cause some sort of skin problem, يعني eczema, or some of them said maybe يعني leprosy, يورث البرص. But it might not cause leprosy, but it might cause some sort of so here they said هذا لأجل الطب. This is for medicinal reason. If the medicine, the medics say to you that this kind of water will be harmful to your body, then it's going to become makruh to use it. Also, type of the water that cannot be used. So here it cannot be used for tathir is al-ma' al-musta'mal. Water that has been used for another purification. Okay? And basically, ma' al-musta'mal is when you have used it for washing either a najasa or a hadath. So you cannot use it for again. Okay? في رفع حدث ولا إزالة نجس. And what is ma' al-musta'mal? Basically, let's say you now needed to make wudu and you washed your face and this water dripped into a bowl. You can't reuse that water to wash your arms, because this water has been used to remove hadath. So it's still tahar, it's not najis, but it is not suitable to be used again. But you can use it to wash your face again. Why? Because the second washing is a sunnah, is extra. When you wash the first time, you remove the hadath, yeah? You only need to wash once in wudu. You washed once, khalas. But you want to use it again, that's fine. But you can't use it for your arm now because your arm is a fresh, something new. Okay? And so for the first washing, you cannot reuse it for carrying on. This is ماء المستعمل. فقال فإذا أدخل المتوضئ يده في الماء القليل بعد غسل وجهه غير ناوي الاغتراف صار الماء مستعملا. And here he just mentions an example. You have a bowl maybe, so you're not using a tap. You have a bowl. You put your hands here. Your hands you are using as a scoop. للاغتراف. You washed your face, yeah. Now, if you put your arm, now you're going to wash your arm, isn't it, in the wudu? You put your arm in the bucket or the hang, intending to wash it, yeah? Now, you've put your arm, all the water has become used, musta'mal. Why? Because you washed the hadath from the but he said, إِذَا نَوَى الْإِغْتِرَافِ. So if you you're not intending to wash, but you intended to just scoop. So you got the water, came out, then washed your arm. It's not become musta'mal. Yeah? Do you understand the difference? والمستعمل في مسنون كالغسلة الثانية والثالثة تصح الطهارة به. If you're going to use something, the water which is used for a second washing or the third washing, that's fine to use that, because it is not it is not going to lift the hadath from there. Fasl, he said, section after this. We'll end with this last section here. ينجس الماء القليل وغيره من المائعات بملاقاة النجاسة. According to the Imam Shafi'i and the Fiqh of Imam Shafi'i, which is again based on a hadith, that we divide water into little water and a large amount of water. There is a division. What makes the water divide from a lot of water and little water is the hadith of al-qullatayn. Al-qulla is like a big, in the past they used to have these big clay jars. يسموها مثل الجب يعني هذه القلة. So it's like a big jar, and the Prophet ﷺ said إذا بلغ الماء قلتين لم يحمل الخبث. If water, the volume of the water reaches the volumes of 2 qullah, then it does not carry the najasa. Okay? So whenever water reaches more than 2 qullatayn, we are considering it as a lot of water. If it's less than qullatayn, it's little water. Okay, so that's the dividing point. So if it is a little water and something najis goes into little water, it's gonna make the whole of that water najis. Okay? If something najis goes into a large water quantity, if it changes the water, okay, so it changes its color or its taste or its smell, it becomes najis. If it doesn't change it, it is still tahir. Okay, that's here it doesn't matter if it changes or not. So you have a bucket, and you see a dog comes and drinks from the bucket. Okay, dog is najis, he drinks, the whole bucket has become najis. However, if it is large amount, okay, more than the 2 qullatayn, and the dog goes and swims in it, and then he comes out, and there is no change, then it's still tahir. Okay? But again, we differentiate here between al-ma'. The only applications for al-ma' al-qalil and ma' al-kathir is only in water. As for other liquids, we don't have this distinction. Okay? Meaning that other liquids like honey, oil, there is no qullatayn. Because in the hadith, إِذَا بَلَغَ الْمَاء, that's why they're being very, very specific here. So that means if you have a tank, a gallon of oil, yeah, or honey, and a mouse fell into it, yeah, and then it came out again, okay, is the oil tahir or najis?
It's tahir.
Why?
Because you just take the amount, the amount of
the oil. It's oil. يعني زيت. مو سمن. Not semen. زيت. Oil. يعني like olive oil.
ليس طاهر.
Huh? Why? Why ليش طاهر? Huh?
خلطته نجسة.
You left something
خلطته نجسة.
in the oil.
Huh?
Could left something in the oil.
No, so amount we didn't leave anything. يعني it didn't urinate or anything. The mouse, it was walking, it dropped in it, but then you saw it come out and it went. Is the oil najis or not? Huh? Najis? الفارة نجسة? Is the mouse najisa?
No.
No, it's not najis. And it's alive. So it came. So here this oil is still tahir. But if the mouse fell in and died inside the oil, now it's dead. Dead is najis. Okay? Now all of it has become najis. Everything is najis now. Okay? What you are thinking about is if it is solid. So if it is solid, if it's like fat, and you found a mouse dead inside the fat, then you remove the mouse and the fat that's around it, and the rest is okay, because it's not liquid. The other one is liquid ma'i'a. And then he just mentioned here some exception. وَيُسْتَثْنَى مَسَائِل مَا لَا يَدْرُكُهُ الطَّرَفِ. That which cannot be catched by the eye. Meaning that you maybe you are urinating and you are standing, because you can't sit down for whatever reason, and then you saw some water as some urine is like flicking off, but it cannot, it's not seen, you can hardly see it. You know there's something flicking, but you can't see it. Okay, this is very small. It cannot, not to be seen by the eyes. This is mustathna. It's allowed. We're not gonna consider that as munajjis. وَمَيْتَةٌ لَا دَمَ لَهَا سَائِلٌ. A dead animal which doesn't have flowing blood. So this includes things like flies, mosquitoes, beetles, things like this. If they fall into the water, a little water, or other liquids, if it doesn't have a flowing blood, so it's an insect, then it does not. We're going to say this is mustathna. The hadith of Rasulullah when he said, إِذَا وَقَعَ الذُّبَابِ فِي إِنَاءِ أَحَدِكُمْ. If a fly were to fall into any one of your containers, he said, then you should dip the fly into the container and then you can use it, because the dhubab, it has one wing, it has a disease, and one wing it has medicine. وَإِنَّمَا يَتَّقِي بِالْجَنَاحِ الَّذِي فِيهِ الدَّاء. When it falls on the wing that has the disease. So that's why you have to dip it. But anyway, the ulama said, based on this, anything that doesn't have flowing blood, so unlike a rat or a mouse or a cat or whatever which dies inside it, then it is mustathna. The only exception, إِلَّا إِذَا غَيَّرَتْ أَوْ طُرِحَتْ. Okay? So many flies have fallen into this water that the water has become a black, or something. This is, we're going to say, it's not or you took a fly and put it in the water. You are messing about. Why are you putting it? You say, if you put it in the water, it is going to be najis. If it's a dead fly, if you put it in, it's najis. وَفَمُ هِرَّةٍ تَنَجَّسَ ثُمَّ غَابَتْ وَاحْتُمِلَ وُلُوغُهَا فِي مَاءٍ كَثِيرٍ. A cat is طاهر, but if you saw a cat eating a pigeon, a pigeon, the pigeon is dead, it's najis, so its mouth now is najis, so for you saw the cat, its mouth is najis. If that cat was now immediately go and drink from a bucket of water, the water is going to become najis. But if the cat disappeared, you saw it eat the pigeon, but then after that you couldn't see the cat, it went away. وَاحْتُمِلَ. So here now you're saying it's very likely that cat went and drank some water from a puddle or something. So now the mouth has cleaned now. And then it came back. Here, do we know that the cat went and washed its mouth? No. ظن, صح? فإذا here هذا معفي. It is an exception. It's allowed. It's one of the exception in the Sharia to say that don't start to look deep in it. خلاص, as long as there's ihtimal that it went and it drank water somewhere else, so it's cleansed its mouth, and then it's come back to use your water, we're going to say that is fine. Alright? وَكَذَلِكَ الصَّبِيِّ إِذَا تَنَجَّسَ ثُمَّ غَابَ وَاحْتُمِلَ طَهَارَتُهُ. So you have a small boy, okay, no nappies, he's dry, and he urinated, okay, so you saw him urinate on his clothes, okay, but then again غَابَ وَاحْتُمِلَ طَهَارَتُهُ, he came back after a while, and you are assuming that his mother changed his clothes or he was given a wash or whatever. Then here the ihtimal is, we're not going to assume that he is najis because of that. والقليل من دخان النجاسة. Here in the past they used to bring najasa. They used to use the cow dung. It's like any of the cow. But what they used to do, they bring the cow and they put it on the wall, the cow dung, and they splat it on the, not inside the house, on the outside wall, and it becomes like a cylinder disc. This disc is used for as like energy, like a coal, heating. So it's used because they can burn it. It's full of fossil fuels. Carbon, and they will heat it. So here when it's heating, there's dukhan, so it is najis. The dukhan is najis, the thing is najis, but it can be used to heat. You are heating your home, it's going in the chimney, whatever. But this dukhan, he's saying qalil, little of the dukhan is okay, accepted. But if all the dukhan is coming on you, then he's going to say it is najis. لا
بس اعتقد كان يصير الجمر فيحمي التنور وبعدين يستخدموه.
يحمي اذا يحمي التنور
هو
يختلف.
يحرقونه بالبدايه بعدين يصير كالجمر ويخبزون به. لحد الان بالعراق يستخدمونه يعني.
The brother is saying they make the bread using this system. But I think what they use, مثل ما قلت هم يحمون التنور. مو هو حاطيه يشون عليه مو هو مثل منقلة. So it's heating up the clay oven, and then the clay oven is being used to cook the.
شيخ روث ما يأكلوا لحمه ليس طاهر.
في المذهب الشافعي ليس طاهر لعموم العموم الصفة إنه نجس ركس نعم. Okay, so that's, and the last thing which is also معفى عنه, there is an exception, is القليل من الشعر النجس. So a little amount of sha'r, of hair, is excused as well. The general principle is that that an animal, any animal, whenever something is cut off an animal, it has the hukum, the rule of being like a dead part of that animal. What does that mean? The animal is dead. A dead animal is najis, So if that animal were to lose some of its body, how do we treat that animal? Is that animal najis or not? So, a cat, for example, or a donkey, these are animals that are not consumed. You can't eat them. So anything that comes off them, of hair, is considered najis. Unlike a camel or a horse or a cow or a sheep, their hair and their wool is tahir. But a cat or an animal like that who is not eaten, not consumed, its hair is najis. So that's why if you keep a cat, you have to be very careful that you do not, and the hair doesn't become. But here he's saying the exception is al-yasir. If it's a little amount, that is excused. But if it's a lot of hair, then it's like you are carrying najasa, so it is not going to be excused in this regards.